Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into one of the most fascinating and honestly heartbreaking stories in modern history, Michael Jackson, the king of pop. On one hand, you've got a figure of unprecedented musical genius who literally reshaped global entertainment as we know it. But on the other hand, there's a personal life that was deeply troubled, bizarre, and ultimately ended in tragedy. We're going to explore that stark dichotomy today, looking at the huge gap between his world-changing success and the devastating personal ruin that defined his life behind closed doors.
So let's kick things off with a pretty staggering number, 39. That is exactly how many Guinness World Records Michael Jackson holds. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. This instantly establishes the monumental scale of his success. We aren't just talking about a popular musician here. We're looking at an absolute musical genius who rewrote the record books over and over again. His unparalleled achievements in music really serve as the foundation for everything else we're going to unpack.
And you know what's truly wild? That massive scale of success, it didn't even stop when his life did. For a full decade, from 2013 all the way to 2023, Michael Jackson sat right at the very top of the list for highest earning deceased celebrities. His ability to generate immense wealth continued long after his passing, which really just highlights how incredibly huge his cultural footprint was. He was, for sure, an industry unto himself. But while the world was eagerly consuming his art and fueling that commercial empire, the man behind it all was building a sanctuary that led to a profoundly isolated life. So let's look at Section 1, Scandals at Neverland, the Chasm of Fame. To build the sanctuary, Jackson bought this sprawling 2,700-acre estate in California and literally transformed it into a fully functioning private amusement park. We're talking an exotic private zoo, the whole shebang. It was a fantasy land carefully designed to completely isolate him from the outside world. And within that extreme isolation, bizarre eccentricities kind of took hold, like rampant rumors that he slept in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber to try and extend his life to 150 years. It paints a really vivid picture of someone who became entirely disconnected from normal, everyday existence. Well, that intense isolation basically set the perfect stage for the highly publicized legal battles that would shadow the rest of his life. Mapping out this rapid succession of events is absolutely crucial to grasping how his world fell apart. We see the first major allegations surfacing in 1993, followed a decade later by a grueling trial starting in 2003. That eventually leads to an acquittal in 2005, and finally, the desperate announcement of his This Is It tour in 2009. The public ruin really began centering on his Neverland sanctuary in August of 1993. A 13-year-old named Jordan Chandler formally accused Jackson of child sexual abuse, triggering a massive global scandal. During all the chaos, Jackson's own sister, LaToya, initially supported the claims, though she later completely retracted those statements. Ultimately, the criminal investigation didn't proceed, and the civil case was closed with an enormous $23 million out-of-court settlement. But make no mistake, despite that settlement, this event forever altered the public's perception of Neverland. As his public image fractured, his personal well-being was quietly collapsing right in the background. That brings us to Section 2, Health Struggles and Legal Battles, the Human Cost. Now, you might be wondering about his physical changes, and this perfectly illustrates the agonizing disconnect Jackson lived with. On one hand, you had intense public scrutiny and accusations that he was intentionally bleaching his skin to erase his African-American identity, but the medical reality was entirely different. Jackson suffered from severe vitiligo, a pigment-destroying skin condition. The public harshly judged him for a devastating disease, later confirmed by both his dermatologist and his official autopsy, which he literally had absolutely no control over. But actually, the vitiligo was just one piece of a much larger health puzzle. First, Jackson underwent numerous cosmetic surgeries, resulting in extreme physical trauma and pain. When you compound that daily agony with his intense isolation and severe depression, well, it cascades logically into a deeply tragic, debilitating dependency on prescription painkillers. The origin of his addiction wasn't recreational at all. It was grounded in harsh, very real human suffering. Right as his health was actively deteriorating, his legal troubles flared back up, leading to the exhausting 2003 trial. Now, he was acquitted on all counts in 2005, but here's the thing. An acquittal doesn't equal freedom from ruin. Walking away free didn't mean he walked away whole. The ordeal left him completely financially ruined. The immense stress severely worsened his medical issues, leaving him deeply dependent on powerful drugs simply to fight off grueling stress-induced insomnia. With his body failing and his bank account severely depleted,
He had to make a desperate move. Let's get into Section 3, a tragic final act. This is it. Desperate to clear those massive debts, Jackson scheduled a demanding 50-show London residency titled This Is It in 2009. The physical and mental pressure to perform 50 nights at his legendary standard was just unimaginable. Tragically, he wouldn't even make it to opening night, suffering a fatal cardiac arrest on June 25, 2009. So the crucial point here is understanding what actually caused his heart to stop. It wasn't a natural heart attack. The culprit was propofol. This is a powerful surgical anesthetic used to put patients under for major hospital operations. It is absolutely not a standard pharmacy sleep aid. So how exactly does a surgical anesthetic end up in a bedroom? Well, that falls squarely on the gross negligence of his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray. Dr. Murray administered these highly dangerous sedatives in a standard residential room, operated entirely without necessary vital monitoring equipment, and dangerously delayed calling emergency services when Jackson's heart stopped. Because of these actions, Dr. Murray was convicted and served a 4-year prison sentence for involuntary manslaughter. The official autopsy findings paint an incredibly grim picture of his final days behind closed doors. His once dynamic body had literally been reduced to skin and bones. At the time of his passing, his stomach contained only drugs and no food. His entire biological system had been completely desensitized by years of chronic substance abuse. It's a very stark, devastating reality of what his isolated life had truly become. Yet despite that deeply tragic physical decline, his cultural power, it remained absolute. When the news of his sudden passing broke, the sheer volume of searches literally crashed global internet servers. The world completely stopped. Shortly after, his televised memorial service became one of the most watched broadcasts in the entire history of television. It's a staggering paradox, really. A man physically wasting away in private, whose death proved his unprecedented global impact was as massive as ever. Which brings us to the end. We've talked about the 39 Guinness World Records, we know about the billions generated, but we've also seen the severe isolation, the agonizing physical pain, and a life ended by a desperate need just to get some sleep. This leaves us with one lingering, heavy thought to reflect on today. What is the true heavy cost of being the ultimate king of pop? It's a stark reminder that immense fame often carries an equally immense personal tragedy. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope it gave you a deeper understanding of the complex man behind the music.